Hello and welcome to Scrutiny. I'm Edward Rooney. If you've ever taken a walk near one of central Auckland's so-called freshwater creeks, you were probably disgusted. Meola Creek in particular has been a toxic eyesore for decades. Around the headwaters on the slopes of Mount Albert, it's even worse than what people typically see further downstream at the harbour end. This is a city that will host a Rugby World Cup shortly. The St Luke's Environmental Protection Society has been treading water or even going backwards on this problem for years. Spokesperson Liz Walker joins us. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you, Edward.
All right, let's start with the state of Meola Creek then. It's a disgusting mess, or is that too polite? What's the condition?
I think it varies. Each of the creeks really has their own story. They have their own catchment, their own differences. Meola Creek is unusual in that it's dirtiest right up the top. Very unusual.
As I say, people see all the litter down the harbour end, but it's not actually, there's litter, sure, but up in the headwaters there is where the heavy metals and all that get in.
It looks like grey sludge for at least 6 months of the year. And the main reason for that, we believe, is because it is a sewer outfall. So in fact, I've worked out there's about 300 Olympic swimming pools full of sewage and other stormwater overflows go down the creek on the average each year. So
in the heart of residential Auckland.
Yes, indeed.
Hard to believe.
It's a sad story. It worked well in the old days when it was set up because it relied on the fact that it's all permeable volcanic soil around there.
Right.
And now there are so many infills and everything like that we get so many overflows, and now it's happening very, very frequently, and the sewage gets mixed in with the stormwater. Every
escape for the pollutants is now being clogged in effect, and it all just keeps on tumbling down through the bed.
It's only on certain big storm events, basically. Once the stormwater gets too big a volume,
yes,
the main sewer is actually way under capacity of what's needed, and there is a big solution, an expensive solution, and that is the Water Care Services has a project to fix the main interceptor, and that's going to take 20 years to build or 15 years to build, and it has yet to go through resource consents.
Once they agree to start doing it.
That's right. That's the point. Yeah.
Okay, what is in there that shouldn't be in there? Let's talk about some of the substances that go through here.
Well, sewage is raw sewage, and yes. There's a wonderful slide that I've got that shows on particular storm events, and I think it was about October 1, 2006 happened to be the date that I photographed it. You can see the water comes right up onto the park, goes over some football fields that are next door, and that has been measured in council reports at well over the standards for New Zealand safety
levels,
yeah.
the so-called
public health
fecal coliforms or whatever.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Yes. And the other thing one of our members did as a postgraduate student, he walked along, measured some of the heavy metal, and he found out often it's copper and zinc. He found out that it's mostly zinc in that particular creek, which is the problem.
And zinc comes from industry or broken pipes? What's roofs?
Roofs that are not painted properly. I guess that, there are probably many sources of it. And the issue is that even though sewage is, not very nice, it's horrible to have on your fields, when it does get to the harbour, or before even, sometimes it can disperse within 3 or 4 days. That is not the same with copper, zinc and other pollutants, and that is where Meola Reef is really suffering.
Go into the food chain there, they go into the cycle of life.
And the aquatic life is measurably declining in our harbour.
Whose job is it to fix it?
Well, I must say that all the individuals that we deal with in Auckland City, in Metro Water, and Water Care Services...
Half of them probably live in the area as well. Yeah.
They all want to do the right thing.
Yes.
But there are many there are many stakeholders involved, and that makes it hard.
The creek itself covers a few different jurisdictions, doesn't it? I mean, there's all sorts of people in charge of various parts of it.
Yes, the Eden Albert Community Board we deal with, Chris Dempsey and Glenda Fryer, Councillor Casey, they're all very helpful. The other end, Graham East and Lee Kenaway have both had something to do with the Western Bays. But we don't have an end-to-end plan for Meola Creek.
Right.
That's kind of difficult. We also have ARC they have some responsibilities.
They have responsibility for the environment, don't they?
That's right. But in fact, the way it all works out, as far as we can understand it, Auckland City has responsibility for the water quality in Meola Creek. Obviously, their plans then need to be in sync with the environmental standards of ARC, and that is not always the case.
No. So it's not clear who exactly should step in and say, right, let's fix this.
Yeah, I think the fact is that maybe this Auckland governance thing can do something about it, but at the moment we know that water care services need parts of $1 billion or $1 billion project to fix part of it. We know that Metro Water needs to do sewerage separation.
Yes.
And they are considering that maybe Meola Creek will be the next cab off the rank, as they put it. Currently they're doing Motions Creek. So everyone's trying to help. We're doing little projects with Metro Water, like planting, which really does make a visual difference immediately, and that helps. People know that people care.
What does planting do? Does that shield the view of some of the worst parts? I mean, what are you doing with the planting?
The idea is really that it will shade the creek over time, so that shading it reduces the temperature in it, and even if you've got horrible things in it, a cooler creek is a slightly better creek.
They don't thrive so much, all those bad bacteria.
No. And there is another big part of the solution, and that is to get seepage happening in all parts of the catchment. So we want them to do little maintenance works over in Mount Eden and places like that, so that the aquifer is recharged, and we hope that will help the base flow, because low base flow also keeps the creek hot, if you like.
Hot and stagnant.
Hot and stagnant and nasty. So if you can have, if the aquifer can be recharged, maybe the base flow can be a little higher. And there are various other ideas that people have got to slow the flow and things like that, just to try to improve conditions in the creek, even without it being cleaned up.